Hey there everyone, Video Game Cabinet here, and tonight we're doing a review of Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake for the Japanese MSX console series, released in 1990. It never came out here in the United States until they released it many years later on series compilations such as the Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection. And that's where I played it here. I originally played it about 20 years ago on emulation on a downloaded ROM on my computer, but I just replayed it a second time here on the Legacy Collection. So this is my review for Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake is the second installment in the famous stealth espionage franchise, and it released in 1990 for the MSX console line exclusively in Japan. I first played it on emulation in the early 2000s, and I played through it again on the Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection for the PlayStation 3 just this past week. Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake is an excellent sequel that surpasses the original Metal Gear in every way. The storytelling and presentation are greatly enhanced in this entry, immersing you from the get-go with an awesome intro cinematic to set the stage. You return as Solid Snake, now on a mission to infiltrate the terrorist headquarters in the nation of Zanzibar, 3 years after the events in the first Metal Gear game. Snake is tasked to rescue Dr. Keo Marv, who has been kidnapped after developing a microbe that will replace the world's oil supply. Metal Gear 2 boasts an intricate plot with plenty of twists and turns and well-written dialogue to flesh out the characters. Many of the supporting cast returns from the previous game, and their history together shapes much of the drama that unfolds. Snake's persona is developed much further as he actually speaks this time around. You also team up with several other memorable characters, including your commanding officer Roy Campbell and the game's two love interests, Holly White and Gustava Hefner. The gameplay is also far advanced from the first Metal Gear, with smart enemies that can hear your footsteps or if you knock on walls. The new radar map shows where the guard soldiers are, and they no longer automatically respawn every time you walk back and forth between rooms. There are also more clever ways to hide now, with Snake's new ability to duck and crawl under tables and into ducts. It was also really fun to solve the puzzles by calling your team for clues over codec and getting hints from the children running around Zanzibar. It's a shame we never received Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake in the United States until series compilations were released many years later. This really was one of the best games of its generation. The tight plot, cool atmosphere, and creative gameplay made this one stand out ahead of the pack. I rate Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake a 9 out of 10. And that's my review. Yeah, I have great memories of playing this one. I guess this was, I looked it up on Wikipedia. I guess this was released on the MSX2 console. I think there were like, it was a line of console series or whatever released in Japan only, never here. And yeah, I mean, MSX, MSX2, whatever you call it, but we never received that console line here in the United States. So we didn't get to play this officially until I think it released on the Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence edition, which came out like in 2006 or 7 or so, I forget, on the PS2. And then later this PS3 Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection came out sometime in the early 2010s. I'm not too sure, but yeah, this game, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, originally came out all the way back in 1990. So, you know, I wish we got a port of it on the NES or the TurboGrafx or something, but, you know, we never did, so that kind of sucks. But, yeah, for a game of this, I guess this would qualify in the third generation of consoles. This had a great plot, you know, especially for a game of that era. Good plot twists with hidden connections between certain characters that I don't want to spoil, and other returning characters from the first game that are developed a lot more here, including Snake himself. He didn't really talk in the first one until, like, I think the very end. He has like one line, right before the end credits roll, but like in here he talks a lot and they develop his personality a lot. And of course they develop it much further in the next game, which is Metal Gear Solid on the PS1. Yeah, it's cool seeing a lot of the old characters here. And this is a much longer game than the first Metal Gear on MSX. It's about double the length, double the size of the adventure. Yeah, one other thing I want to mention is last year when I was making my top 35 favorite games of each console generation, and this is the one game off the top of my head that I was like, drat, I forgot to include that one. On Generation 3, which was just loaded with NES and Famicom titles on my list, I should have put this one in there. It had just been so long since I had played it that I was just like, whatever. And I did not and still do not have a physical copy of the original MSX, but, I have it here on the compilation. But yeah, this would have definitely made the list if I'd remembered. And when I revise those lists in the future, this will definitely make my top 35 of Generation 3, So, yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts. Metal Gear was a really, really good start. I rated that an 8 out of 10, and I replayed it and reviewed it earlier this month. But this sequel really, really kicks it up a notch. Definitely, if the first one's an 8, this one is definitely a 9. Metal Gear Solid on the PS1, which comes next, and is actually the third game in the canon series. That game is a masterpiece. That was the first one I played way back in high school 25 years ago when it came out. And that game, I might replay that again soon for old time's sake. But I remember that one being a 10 out of 10. But yeah, this one, I'm going to go with 9 out of 10, for this review. It is a great game. And definitely a substantial upgrade over Metal Gear 1 that came out also on the MSX. But, yeah, so those are my thoughts on Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. I had a great time replaying this one again after it's been about 20 years since I played it on emulation. And yeah, so 9 out of 10 for Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake on the MSX console line. And have a good night.